So I saw Spider-Man Brand New Day, and honestly, guys, I really enjoyed this movie a whole lot. I think this movie really does understand the significance of what it is to be like Spider-Man in a way. And the thing that I really did like about this movie was it's like a fresh start. So basically, for those who are unaware, this is basically continuing after No Way Home. And this really does kind of make it feel like as if like it's a proper continuation of what Spider-Man No Way Home was trying to be at the end where they forgot who he was. Now, I do just want to say real quick before I do talk about this movie, there are spoilers in this video, and honestly, I really think you guys are gonna enjoy it if you do plan on seeing it because Spider-Man Brand New Day is really a good movie in terms of like understanding the fundamentals of Spider-Man and just trying to continue where No Way Home left off in that regard. And also, too, I think if you really are just a big fan of Spider-Man, then you really will enjoy this movie. And yeah, so without further ado, let's just get straight into the video. So the movie it kind of starts off with Peter chasing these criminals. I didn't see the first 5 minutes of this movie. I was kind of late to seeing this movie because I had work and everything, but once I like caught on and like kind of saw like what was happening, I was able to kind of piece everything together. And what's really neat is in this movie you see Spider-Man actually working with cops and working with like detectives and whatnot, and that's actually like how he is in the games, and I believe the comic books as well, and some of the cartoons where he'll actually like try to investigate like crimes and like try to figure out like why the criminals are doing the things they are. And so it's really kind of a nice change of pace as well from the usual Spider-Man movies. Because usually in Spider-Man movies, he's not really working with anybody. Like, he's just kind of doing his own thing. I mean, yeah, of course, like, the Avengers are there as well. But in this movie, it just was kind of different to see, like, how he's working with cops and he's relying on them for some help and everything. And I really did enjoy that. And as this movie's progressing, like, throughout the span of a few days, like, he kind of starts like realizing like he's starting to change a little bit, but it's because of like how his arachnid levels are starting to like increase and kind of out fluctuate his human levels of being like Spider-Man and Peter Parker. And I really thought that was kind of interesting to see as well because like as you see like he's getting more aggressive. He starts kind of like trying to go after people, and it almost seemed like he was almost going to kill a cop in this one scene, and and then he'll come back to his senses in a way. It's almost like as if this was like the symbiote in a way, and that's kind of what I was getting like real symbiote flashbacks because the symbiote makes Peter more aggressive and makes him like not like as merciful towards people, but this one it seems literally like as if like the spider DNA was really taking him over and making him more of a monster. In this one scene where he's with MJ and Ned, he gets really emotional and he's really happy to see how they're all like kind of moving on with their life, and like they don't remember who he was. That's what the thing was this scene is literally him not knowing, like them not knowing who he is because of just the fact that he cast that spell at the end of No Way Home. And it's kind of heartbreaking to see, I'm not gonna lie, because like you see a character like Spider-Man and he really does go through a lot of like hardship in some way. And honestly, I think the closest we get to that is Spider-Man 2, honestly, where like it really understands the character of Peter Parker and Spider-Man in a way too, where it's like, yeah, Spider-Man might get all the praise in some way, but then Peter Parker kind of gets the short end of the stick in this regard of life. And that's kind of what makes it hard for him to be Spider-Man in the end of the day. And honestly, like you see the scene and like Peter just kind of looks like he's a little bit of an outcast. He doesn't really know how to feel about this. And he actually did talk about this at one point in the movie where he said he just kind of sticks to himself because he doesn't want to let people in, because he kind of likes to kind of stay alone and kind of just like he's kind of scared of like bringing certain people into his life just because of the fact that he tries to keep them safe. And I really did enjoy that whole entire scene with that as well. And then we see like how he's like running through the rain after the whole entire party scene, and then like he starts swinging and everything, and like they're playing flashbacks of him like with Ned and MJ from his past, and I think even Aunt May was also involved too in some way. And it really was like sad to see because, you're just seeing him like go through this like hardship of being alone and like not having anybody to rely on. But see, also too, I do like that this happened because at the end of at all of Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies, he basically did have somebody to kind of lean on to. And that's kind of where I think like Spider-Man does work better in that regard because he has to learn to figure things out as well and like start, becoming a more compelling character as the movie goes on. And that's what I think this kind of movie did in that regard as well. It's almost like he's refining himself again. And so, yes, obviously we see all that with Peter. He's going through all this trouble. He meets up with Bruce Banner. He tries to figure out like how to like suppress his arachnid levels as well. And obviously Bruce doesn't remember who Peter is. So that's kind of interesting as well. And as all this is happening, where there's also a villain who's kind of around as well. And guys, I'm going to be honest, when she was revealed, I was not really shocked too much. So we go into this villain and we get to see who she is. And it was Sadie Sink, aka Jean Grey, in this movie. And honestly, I think she did a pretty good job. I mean, I really do. She was basically trying to, be basically this like person who starts a lot of drama in Peter's life because she found out everything about him in terms of like how she can basically like go into his apartment when he wasn't around and like kind of like see like things about him and everything, and then like kind of had the power of telepathy to kind of like read people's minds, and like also was able to like go to other people's bodies and take possession of them. And it's pretty scary to see because like we've never seen a Spider-Man villain like that. And for it to be somebody like Jean Grey to kind of be actually like giving Peter kind of a little scared, because there's points where Peter's even like really scared of like how to really take her down and everything, and he doesn't really know how to like go about this whole thing. But we actually find out that she actually had somewhat of a similar arc as to what Peter's going through in terms of that. But I'm going to get more into that as the video goes on. So obviously, she's going through people's bodies, she's going through people's minds, she's taking them over. And then there's even this one scene where she says she's going to go after MJ, and Peter gets totally pissed off about this, and he wanted to chase after uh Jean because obviously she's going through people's minds and everything. So she goes after MJ, and Peter gets to see MJ again for the first time in so long, like to actually talk to each other. Like, yeah, they did like talk to each other a couple times, but this time he's Spider-Man and he's going to save MJ. And so they go to this rooftop and they're just kind of talking, and then they kind of swerve us a little bit because then she kind of remembered like, hey, like, you're Peter, I remember you and everything. And then they share a kiss and everything, and he's so happy to see that she's basically remembering who he is and everything, and he said he missed her so much. And I ain't gonna lie, I could kind of tell this scene, like with the scene, there was something kind of off about it because of just the simple fact that she kind of was acting too sweet and too innocent at this point, but also not really giving like Peter that much affection when she hugged him, because then she kind of said like, you're too easily tricked and everything, and he immediately found out that that was Jean controlling her. Because that's the thing, Peter doesn't have the ability to like really sense like where she is. All he can do is just like basically has to like pick up like on their behavioral type of tone. And so then once she left MJ's body, MJ basically was and regained her control, regained her body and everything, and she did not remember a single thing that happened with the whole entire encounter of her being possessed. And of course, Peter had to save MJ. He brings her out to the Punisher's house. And I just wanted to go on record and say this real quick about the Punisher. I think he really was a good choice for this movie. I mean, he definitely did kind of play like almost like he was like big brother in a way to Peter, because it's almost like as if like the way he was kind of acting in this movie, he literally acted like as if he could have been like Peter's like mentor, where like he was like but it was also kind of like his like buddy in a way as well too, where it's like, he'd always like give him trouble and like always like criticize like, why are you doing things like this, blah blah blah. And it was kind of funny, I ain't gonna lie to say, to be honest. So we saw that the Punisher basically was just there, and then Peter and MJ are trying to find out more about like who Jean is and everything. And remind you, MJ doesn't know who Peter is still. Yeah, she was possessed, but she still doesn't know that he was Spider Man. Like, she doesn't know that he's Peter and everything. So, this is all still just kind of MJ just kind of going with the flow. And then there's like a scene where MJ is just kind of hanging out, talking to Peter, and Peter has his mask off, but you can't obviously see like she can't see that he's wearing like not having his mask on because there's like a curtain in front of him, and they're just kind of talking to each other, and like he's hinting that like, yeah, like there was this one girl I really liked and everything, and even though she doesn't know that's her, but still. So it's kind of neat to see. I kind of did like how they had this moment together though, because it almost made it feel like as if like it was Tom Holland and Zendaya just kind of naturally acting. Like they weren't even like having to put on a face or anything. They were just naturally acting and being themselves in a way. And it's kind of cool to see. It's kind of cute in a way as well. I ain't gonna lie. But yes, they find out that it's Jean Grey who's taking control of everything. So then finally, Peter decides to leave the Punisher with MJ, and then he goes and finds Jean Grey, and they actually do have a moment to confront each other, and then the Hulk comes out of nowhere. And I'm just going to go on record and say this, guys. When I saw the trailer that the Hulk was going to be in this movie, I was pretty hyped to see that, I'm not going to lie. But I was also a little disappointed with how this fight went. I kind of went into this fight knowing like he probably wasn't going to last long. And so he actually did kind of he started out kind of just as regular Hulk in a way, but then he also became like the actual Savage Hulk that we knew from like Avengers and Age of Ultron and the beginning of Infinity War, where he was able to take down like Thanos and whatnot. And we see Hulk come in, and he's doing like this incredible damage to Peter. And then, of course, Peter just like is trying to find a way to stop him. And then he's just like about to basically crush Spider Man. And then he's like, hey, like, don't do this. I'm Peter. And remember, I'm your friend and everything. And then the Hulk basically, he basically just kind of lets him go. And then he kind of, I think he tried to like to sacrifice himself in a way. I can't remember what exactly he was trying to do here, but he basically gets off of Peter. He sees that like, okay, I'm not going to do whatever I'm going to do to you. And then he just kind of goes away. And see, that's why like I feel like it's hard to bring a character like the Hulk into a movie like this, because a lot of people do have this problem with the Hulk where they think he's not doing enough in these movies and everything. And I will admit, yes, he's not doing enough in that regard, but we also have to be honest with ourselves too and know that the Hulk could pretty much kill or destroy anybody if he wanted to. I mean, the Hulk is that OP. So they have to kind of find ways to nerf the Hulk in a way. And I know that may not be a lot of people's cup of tea personally. I know a lot of people would probably be like this is kind of stupid. Like, why even bring him in then and to begin with? But that's why like it's hard to make a movie with the Hulk because, he's really just that powerful of a character. And yeah, it sucks, I guess, but in a way, it's like, well, they have to find some way to nerf him without making him this overpowered type of beast. So obviously, then Peter has this inhibitor that the same inhibitor he was able to use to like suppress his arachnid levels. He did create an inhibitor to basically turn off Jean's powers. And so there's a scene where Jean's in this bank with these people, and she's gonna basically try to have the Punisher kill everybody because the Punisher did show up to this fight and everything, but except he was just coming to be Peter's aide, and then she took control of the Punisher, and he was able to just basically these people. But then Spider-Man comes in, he takes out the Punisher's gun, and then he puts this inhibitor on Jean, and then she's has no control of her powers whatsoever. So then the guy who is helping Peter, like with this whole entire thing. Like, one of the guys was actually going to say, like, okay, I'll just take Jean back to where she needs to be locked up and we can talk, and I'm going to ask her questions and everything. And then this is a really interesting piece of information. So Peter asked this guy about, like, Jean, like, how she said there was a girl named Sarah, and that was the last thing she said. And then this guy says, well, that's actually somebody I worked really closely with that passed away. And Peter was like, oh, okay, and then just kind of moved on about it. And then he goes back to MJ. He basically talks to MJ, and she finds the note that he actually had when he was going to say it to her at the end of No Way Home. And then he takes the mask off, and she was like, I have seen you before. You're the guy from this party. You're the guy from the coffee shop when I was seeing you a few years ago. And they really had this moment where, like, it was really sad to see because he wanted to, like, really, like, not, he didn't really want to have to explain anything to her because he just wanted to protect her and keep her safe. But once she found out about how he was really Spider-Man, it really kind of was heartbreaking in a way because, like, you could see Peter really does like being with MJ and everything. And he feels really bad the fact that, he has to do all this and everything. And then, of course, he gets to this point where he doesn't really know how else to tell her, so he just comes out and tells her the truth, and she's kind of hurt by it all and everything. And then, I'm not gonna lie, this scene kind of made me mad because after the scene was over where she kind of walked away, she said, oh, hey, I actually need a ride home and everything, and, like, can you possibly swing me back to my house or something? So I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really like that scene. So he takes her back home, and I think she kind of felt bad in a way. So then she did say, hey, if you wanted to come up and say hey to Ned, you can. And so then he goes up, says hey to Ned. They're basically all hanging out like as if nothing ever did happen. Ned doesn't know that Peter is Spider-Man because, Spider-Man's got the he's in Spider-Man suit and everything while he's doing all this. And only MJ knows that Peter is Spider-Man now at this point. So they're just kind of all hanging out talking. He finds out more about, like, Sarah and everything, and it turned out Sarah is actually Jean's sister, which was kind of a mind blow in a way too. So when I said that literally they kind of went through a similar arc, Peter and Jean do, we get more insight as to, like, who Jean's character is and everything. And so she's basically talking to Sarah in this, like, flashback scene, and they're talking and everything. Sarah was basically caught by these people, and then she was going to be taken out, but then she gave her power to Jean in a way because Sarah was showing Jean how the powers worked and everything in this scene. But then literally Sarah gives her powers to Jean, and then Jean is basically this character where she was being possessed in a way, but she also has the power as well. And now she's being locked up in this, like, asylum, and the guy who we already were talking about earlier, he starts asking her questions like, hey, like, like, can you hear me, Jean? Blah, blah, blah. And the guy who lied to Peter about Sarah and everything, he starts, like, trying to do these, like, tests to, like, see, like, how her power and everything. And then finally, Jean breaks through the entire glass that's concealing her. She gets out of the asylum, and now she's basically holding everybody captive with her telepathic power. And then Spider-Man arrives, and he actually comes in and basically is fighting these, like, type of ninja type of character, these ninja type of warriors. And it was also pretty cool to see as well because, here we are, we're seeing Spider-Man take on like 5, 6, 8 guys at a time, and it's really cool to see because of just the fact that he was able to take on all these guys. But then, of course, they start to kind of overwhelm him, and then he gets to a point where he's like he can't do anything. And Jean's actually talking to Peter through the entire ninja clan, and then she's like, you can't do anything. You're alone. There's nothing you can do about it. And then, of course, we get to see Peter take off the inhibitor, and he goes full on spider mode on all the ninja guys. And I ain't gonna lie, I really thought we were gonna see Man Spider in this movie because of just the fact that, here we are, like, we're seeing how his arachnid levels are starting to increase a little bit. And I really thought that it was gonna lead us to seeing Man Spider, but, that wasn't the case. I guess in a way it probably would have been a little too graphic and scary for some kids in the theater because you guys gotta remember this is still a Spider-Man movie and kids still love Spider-Man at the end of the day. So then, Gene is talking to Peter. He's getting overwhelmed, and then he takes off the inhibitor. He goes full on spider mode, and he takes out all the ninja clan because now he realizes how to control the power. And now he says he's not Peter or Spider Man, he's both. And then he takes down all the people, and he gets to Jean's place. And they actually have a moment together where she kind of goes inside Peter's mind and she sees Aunt May, and they're talking about like power and like how if you do get this power, just remember, no matter how powerful you get, don't have to do this alone. And this is what really made them kind of relate to each other in a way too, because Peter just lost Aunt May, where Jean lost her sister, and they were able to kind of understand each other in a way too. And I feel like that's what the general message of this movie really is trying to say is like when you're alone in life, don't feel like you're isolated or don't feel like you can't do it alone. Just don't be afraid to open up and talk to people in a way. And I really do like that being the general theme of the movie because it really shows that, you know, this really is something that I kind of feel like we kind of go through on a daily basis, like with social media and like our phones and everything. So then, of course, they kind of relate to each other through Peter's mind and they're talking and everything. And then just out of nowhere, you see this like gunshot, and the Punisher was gonna kill Jean, or Peter pushes Jean out of the way, and instead he gets shot. And so he really gets shot, and then he's basically about to die, bleed out and everything. And then Jean says, "No, you can do this," and everything. And almost kind of gave me like Aunt May vibes, like when she got killed by the Goblin in No Way Home, and he was just kind of sitting there, like trying to hold Aunt May and everything, and she kind of was doing the same to Peter in this scene. And then that's kind of how the movie ended there on that part. They cut to this news scene where they're kind of realizing Peter Parker's in critical condition, Spider Man's in critical condition, and he's in the hospital, he's in the ER, and he wakes up and he realizes that he's still alive. And they were thinking like Spider Man was dead for a minute. So then he finally comes back to his senses, he realizes he's okay, and that's really how the movie just ends. And then, of course, like, we got to talk about the final scene. So, Peter's in the flower shop. He sees Ned sitting by himself. So, he goes up and introduces himself. And then they ended up, like, doing their signature dap up that they did back in the original Homecoming trilogy. And then Ned immediately recognized that it was Peter. And what kind of made me kind of curious about this whole thing was the fact that, you know, MJ didn't really remember Peter as much, but then once Ned and him kind of were able to dap each other up, he immediately recognized it was Peter. Well, he didn't immediately recognize him, but he took a second and then he realized, wait a minute, you're Peter. Like, I know you. And then that's just kind of how the movie ends. So then we get a post-credit scene, and it's Ned's little spider tracker thing, because in this movie, Ned's actually obsessed with trying to figure out, like, who Spider-Man is and everything. And there's a little tracker scene where we see that, there's Spider-Man's in the area, but then it kind of zooms out and it shows outer space, and then the screen goes to black and says Spider-Man will return. So that's really how that whole movie really went. So, general thoughts, I mean, I really did enjoy this movie overall. I mean, I really did like how it was a fresh take on a new Spider-Man story in a way, and they tried to do things differently with like trying to show us like how he was going to go about things like after No Way Home and everything. And honestly, there's something else I wanted to mention as well, but, like, when he was getting, like, his spider powers, like, his spider DNA was starting to increase as well, um, like, when he had his organic webbing and everything, I thought that was pretty neat to see as well because I actually kinda made a callback to Tobey's Spider-Man where he said, like, "Oh, yeah, Peter too used to have this as well." So, I really did think that was kind of a neat little scene, and, like, he's how like, having to try to figure out, like, how the powers are working and everything and, like, how to get used to, like, organic webbing, and he doesn't just pick up on it, like, right away. And something else I really did enjoy about this movie was I really liked the fight scenes, and I really liked the, suit as well as a whole because in Tom Holland's suits, like, they kinda just look like they're too good and too clean in a way because it's mainly CGI, but with this one, it actually was more of, like, an actual suit, like, you could tell it looked like an actual person wearing Spider-Man's suit and it actually made it feel like it was kind of real. It kind of gave me flashbacks to when Toby and Andrew would wear their suits. And yeah, and I really did feel like after watching this movie, I mean, Tom Holland, I have started to grow to enjoy him more. And I have started to grow to be like, okay, Tom Holland's easily like a really good Peter Parker and Spider Man. But I'm not gonna lie, I do think that as opposed to how like Spider Man 2 is, because people do say this is like one of the best movies since Spider Man 2. I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but I would definitely say it's probably Tom Holland's best Spider Man movie. And this might honestly be in my top five now because I really did enjoy it, but I wouldn't say it's like my favorite Spider-Man movie. It's good. It's good. I do enjoy it overall, and I enjoy the message of it all entirely. And I really do think that it's basically just something new because Peter is such a good character at the end of the day. And I know I've probably said this before, but Spider-Man's easily like my favorite superhero of all time. And honestly, just seeing a character like Peter Parker like have to go through this like trauma, but also trying to grow as a character, it's just really a unique thing to see and just kind of shows he's really a relatable guy, you know? But I know this video's probably gone on long enough, so I just wanted to talk about this movie and kind of, like the general plot of it, give my thoughts on it. I enjoyed it. I really had fun watching it. I'm excited to see if he will return either in Secret Wars or Doomsday, and I think it's going to be awesome. So, yeah, that's really my view on this movie. I think I basically covered everything that was needed to be talked about. I do hope you guys enjoy this movie, and I hope you guys enjoyed this little review, if you will. And that's really all I have to say. So, nothing else for me to say. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.